Hello, this is Raidmaster Prod here for the first audio commentary of the only Pooh's Grand Adventure poop anyone has ever made. I would like to start this video off by saying that this is one of the first videos of which I'm working through an unscripted process. That's why you might notice some minor pauses, such as the one you just heard back there, because up to now I haven't fully worked on unscripted videos. Instead, I had to type down what I had in mind, and so there you go. Now you are witnessing something that. So now you are witnessing the reason why I had to work with scripted videos until now. Basically, is to prevent these long pauses, which might, and I mean might, come up every now and then during the video. I would write down what I had to say on TextEdit and then record them onto this computer, which, yeah. So this is kind of a challenge for me, and so far I think I'm doing rather great. So, oh, why don't we begin? Hello. Basically, when I first started on this YouTube poop, I was around 15. I was new to iMovie HD, and all this, the YouTube poop, was fairly new to me. So even though I had a good idea on how to go with this YouTube poop, for me YouTube poop was still this sort of repetition as you see here. It will get a little bad later on, but I will admit that was kind of funny. Basically, what I was doing at the time was sort of editing out this movie called Pooh's Grand Adventure, which I still have a very fond spot for to this day. And this little bit right here with the what the fuck was based on something I discovered with the original downloaded videos, in which I had to download them online on multiple parts. So for some reason in the first I'll have to hold on to that when we talk about this jump. For me, it just seemed natural to have Pooh running into this closed room, and I thought, hey, it should be a bathroom. And this flush sound effect was actually recorded from my old house back when I was living in Charlotte, Vermont. Anyways, back to the YouTube poop and that area back there. It was cut between This might come up as an important factor in the later part. The bit when Pooh yells, "Poop!" and we hear a fart noise. Speaking of Charlotte, I know it's the Mr. Sanders area and cannot help but think of our politician, Bernie Sanders. Now back to that area with the what the fuck moment. I think I should just leave it in the blank by now. It's too late. Anyways, oh well, anyways, it was because the beginnings and the ends of the parts for some reason didn't have audio for the first second, and that what the fuck was basically there to hide that effect. And here we are seeing Piglet high up in that acorn tree, and immediately he's in danger. That's in the original Pooh's Grand Adventure, they have a little talk before Piglet gets in this perilous situation. So, and here comes one of the jokes I feel has aged pretty well. Having Piglet yell "help" 3 times before. I will admit, this is still funny.
Piglet, old pal.
I mean,
Well, I guess I just better bounce up there and get him down.
So anyways, you're
Stand
seeing
back.
all this.
This is gonna take a world's record.
And also another difference is that in the original, Tigger bounces several times until it causes an avalanche right here. And we're getting quickly to an area which for me represents the worst bits of this repetition area. This area, of course, in which I feel it's done far too long. But back then I was a brainless kid, sort of editing things to my heart's desire to sort of fulfill my oldest stereotypes about YouTube poop based on videos I saw. Speaking of which, the title, the only Pooh's Grand Adventure poop anyone has ever made, it was actually inspired by a YouTube poop by Walrus Guy known as the only Mama Luigi poop anyone has ever made. In this area, it was supposed to be Rabbit just saying, "It's Harvest Day," before we have him yelling once in slow motion. In Walrus Guy's videos, the only Mama Luigi poop anyone has ever made was one of his most favorite videos. Now I think the channel's down due to copyright regions. I sort of like this video mixing moment. And even though, spoiler alert, Tigger doesn't actually die, that would be fairly horrible. And
If only I could find Christopher.
And coming up is a character of which I would like to talk about a bit. And that character is, of course, Tajomaru from Akira Kurosawa's 1950 classic Rashomon, in which Tajomaru is basically the bandit who is involved with the assault of a samurai and his wife. Here, he's played somewhat more of a comic character. And originally, this sequence coming up right about here. Here's Tajomaru. Originally, this was to be his only scene, but then I sort of grown to sort of, flunk in my Japanese class. But I've decided to just expand his role throughout. The way I was making this YouTube poop is, oddly enough, a lot like J.R.R. Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings. He wasn't a professional writer, even though he was a professor of English at Oxford. When he wrote down the sequel to The Hobbit, he didn't really have a plan in mind. He was just going meandering the way he wanted. Sometimes he even had to go back and rechange it all and do it all over again. And which I didn't do here because this is a comedy. And this minor change is also based on my feelings for this YouTube poop. That even though I do enjoy it, there are a lot of minor flaws of which I feel could have been improved. Especially a big moment in which Owl here misspells S-C-H-O-O-L as skull. But here, thanks to Peter Jackson's King Kong, I sort of fixed it with this overdramatic sequence from King Kong. How funny, because referencing how funny of me referencing King Kong in this YouTube poop when this movie actually when the original movie actually itself has a few King Kong references, not just the upcoming Skelosaurus, but also with the log over the ravine sequence, which I'll get to in part 3. Now I would love to talk about an upcoming joke of which I use a lot, in which I use a clip from Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1, in which a Roman soldier randomly walks into view right there. That clip where he says, "Help that miserable piece of shit!" In which I found that line just hysterically funny, just the way he yells, "Move that miserable piece of shit!" So I used that clip a few times during this YouTube poop, and I'll never forget during the original high quality remix of this, that this effect of owl pulling out the map was far more hilarious. And honestly, for a first part, not to mention my most viewed video at almost 170,000 views, I will admit that this ending is a little drawn out, and I mean, it's just a series of funny noises, which could be funny if you're like a baby or possibly stoned. One of the best things about age is that, for example, sometimes repetition could work well, such as I was saying "woo" while making that funny, almost orgasmic face. Now I have to talk about something about this video. Is that here I sort of combined parts 1 and 2 into one commentary track, partially because they were uploaded on the same day, August 20th, 2008. And there's the end of part 1 and the beginning of part 2. Basically, both parts 1 and 2 were made in a very were made on the same day, in which I was on a road trip with my dad and his family, and I was working on these first 2 parts during the time, and I had to upload it, and I couldn't upload it until the end of
What was that?
until when we went to until we got over to a place. Sorry about that. And now this bit, I feel that this second part is when I was evolving into a new era of what YouTube poop meant for me. It was less a sort of videos repeating over and over again because it's funny, and it was gradually evolving into my current views on YouTube poop, especially with this sequence, in which I called Pooh's Tragic Mental Breakdown. But anyways, it was evolving into a new idea of what YouTube poop was in my eyes. Basically, comedy first, plot 1.5-ish, and here we are watching Pooh's mental breakdown and all the glorious chaos that it causes. And based on Rabbit's personality, this is fucking perfect. Sorry for the language. So anyways, I had a bit of input from my dad and his family on this, and I'll talk more about it with the third part. So Tajamar, navigate, you guys? Never. I'm just transliterating those tiny as hell subtitles there. I was exploring with other ways to sort of communicate my story more. And for the advance, I would like to apologize for some really cheap Photoshop events, such as the one upcoming very soon. For example, this area, this scene right there, where the planet's supposed to bite Rabbit's head. I am so sorry for this noobish area, and I also love this. But I also love this part because it introduces the villain for this sequence. In the original, spoiler alert, the villain, the Skullosaurus, is viewed as basically an imaginary creature. So I felt the movie had to have a live-action villain in the form of Roy Batty from Blade Runner. The reason is simple. At the time I was making this, Blade Runner was my favorite film of all time. I mean, even though I revisited a few movies since then, it's still on my top 5. That and its recent sequel, Blade Runner 2049, which I actually view isn't as good as the original Blade Runner. So that's the main reason why Rory Batty is there. But now I really have to talk about these guys, the John Cleese Faces of Evils. Again, a lot has happened since then. Especially with me actually meeting John Cleese at a Q&A and a screening of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and I showed him this sequence, and seeing the actual man who did that face on Monty Python chuckling at those appearances was something I could never describe. Of course, I am also aware that he served as the narrator for the 2010 movie Winnie the Pooh. That is before that is not to be confused with the recent film Christopher Robin, ironically. And honestly, looking back, if I were to do this scene all over in a higher quality, I would not do this upcoming scene to have this weak ass description that, oh, Winnie the Pooh saved his friends and Rabbit got drunk, I think. That is something which I normally would not do, but in the end, but honestly, it's a bit of a comedy. You can do a lot of things then.
Are you all right, Piglet? No.
So,
Saving me was very brave of you.
I think you'll be happy with the way I ended this YouTube poop. It's a much part 2 is a much better end than part 1. We can all agree that. Not in this exact moment, but coming up with this review. With this bit with Rory Batty. Oh no. To be continued in part 3.